Hi, I'm Paul Arthur. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. The Prime Minister promises Canada will meet its NATO defense spending commitments this year. Plus, while defense spending rises, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is pointing to a new poll that shows Canadians want the feds to dial back overall spending. And the Alberta NDP is expressing concerns about an upcoming event in Calgary where it says the UCP will be cozying up to separatists.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News.
Thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced Canada is fast-tracking its NATO defense spending commitment, reaching 2% of national GDP on defense this year. Ottawa has been facing intense pressure from allies in recent months to swiftly increase its military budget levels to those not seen since the Cold War.
10 years ago, Canada's defense spending fell to less than 1% of GDP. It has since doubled in cash terms, but is still not close enough to face these mounting risks. The brave women and men who are protecting our sovereignty do not have the resources they need for a riskier world. Our military infrastructure and equipment have aged, hindering our military preparedness. Of our 4 submarines is seaworthy. Less than half our maritime fleet and land vehicles are operational. More broadly, we're too reliant on the United States. And so for all those reasons, I'm announcing today that Canada will achieve NATO's 2% of GDP target this year, half a decade ahead of schedule. We will ensure that every dollar is invested wisely, including by prioritizing made-in-Canada manufacturing and supply chains. We should no longer send 3/4 of our defense capital spending to America. We will invest in new submarines, aircraft, ships, armed vehicles, and artillery. Our fundamental goal in all of this is to protect Canadians, not to satisfy NATO accountants.
The decision to boost spending comes ahead of a major NATO meeting in the Netherlands later this month, when allied nations are expected to adopt a plan that hikes the NATO members' spending target to 5% of GDP. Meanwhile, at a news conference today, federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says his party supports the move to boost Canada's NATO defense spending. Reporters then asked him if he agrees with Prime Minister Carney's comments that the big nation-building projects, such as pipelines, must first require consensus. Here is his response.
No, we've got to get it done. We need a pipe. At the end of the day, if you wait till everybody agrees on everything, nothing will happen. You're never going to get everybody to agree on every single project. And bottom line is we're giving 90% of our oil and 100% of our gas to the Americans at enormous price discounts. This is costing us tens of billions of dollars every single year to the exclusive benefit of American refineries and commodity traders who are able to take our product, bid up the price by $15 and sell it on the world stage, and do that literally about 1 billion times a year. And that is insane. So we can't wait any longer. We have to get things done, and it's going to take some backbone. And so we as Conservatives believe in pushing ahead with pipelines, and the shortest route is to the Pacific. You know, any other route is going to be even harder politically and physically. So we need a pipeline to the Pacific, and if the Prime Minister says he's going to wait till everyone agrees, then nothing will get done, which is what has been happening for the last decade.
The Canadian Taxpayers Federation has released results from a Leger poll that shows Canadians want to see a reduction in federal government spending. The poll suggests that 45% of Canadians, or 54% among decided respondents, would want to see reduced spending from the government. In comparison, 19% who would like to see spending maintained at current levels, and 20% who want to see spending increased. However, Franco Terrazzano with the CTF says that Prime Minister Carney's $488 billion spending plan is continuing Justin Trudeau's, quote, debt-fueled spending spree.
I think the poll results are actually crystal clear here. By a wide margin, Canadians want the federal government to cut spending, right? Canadians know that they pay too much tax because the government is wasting too much money. Now, Mr. Carney told Canadians he was going to get a handle on spending, rein spending in. But if you actually look at the main spending plan, the government is increasing spending by another 8% this year. So, Carney told Canadians he would rein in spending. But if you look at the numbers, it looks pretty clear that Carney is continuing Trudeau's debt-fueled spending spree. So, Carney owes Canadians a budget ASAP, but then also if he's going to prioritize spending in one area of the budget, then he's got to find savings in other areas of Ottawa's bloated budget.
Terrazzano adds that if Carney wants to meet NATO's 2% defense target this year, he'll have to find savings in other areas of the budget, which he is calling to be released publicly as soon as possible. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem has laid out his reasons for keeping the central bank's benchmark interest rate steady for a second straight time. 5 years into his tenure as head of the Bank of Canada, Macklem says he sees the central bank's role evolving when it comes to stick-handling the economy. Macklem says the past few years have led to the Bank of Canada to scrutinize some of its metrics like core inflation and how it responds to supply shocks in the economy.
I do think the framework review is a time to reflect on what can monetary policy do and what can it not do. I'm not saying it hasn't been difficult for Canadians. Nobody liked higher inflation. Nobody liked the rapid increases in interest rates. But you look back and yes, it was difficult, but the framework performed well. We got inflation down. We didn't cause a recession to get inflation down. And, to be frank, until President Trump started threatening the Canadian economy with new tariffs, we were actually seeing growth pick up. The unemployment rate started to fall. Businesses were hiring. Consumers were spending. The Canadian economy was on a good track with 2% inflation. I'm not going to pretend it's been an easy few years for anybody, but I think the framework has performed well.
It's been a chaotic few days in Los Angeles as the anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles continue. The Associated Press reports.
Los Angeles is reeling after 3 days of protests that brought fires, rubber bullets, tear gas, and protesters blocking a freeway. It began on Friday when dozens of protesters gathered outside a federal detention center demanding the release of 44 people arrested for immigration violations. It was part of President Trump's mass deportation campaign. Those demonstrations in downtown Los Angeles on Friday then spread on Saturday to Paramount, a heavily Latino neighborhood south of the city and neighboring Compton. President Trump then took the extraordinary step of deploying 300 National Guard members to Los Angeles. It appears to be the first time in decades that a state's National Guard was activated without a request from its governor. Tensions escalated Sunday as thousands of protesters took to the streets in response. They blocked off a major freeway and set self-driving cars on fire as law enforcement used tear gas, rubber bullets, and flashbangs to control the crowd. Posting on Truth Social late into the night, Trump wrote, quote, "Looking really bad in LA, bring in the troops, and arrest the people in the face masks now," end quote. Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom is calling for the National Guard to leave, and he says he plans to sue the administration for what he calls, quote, an illegal act.
Federal authorities say ICE teams will continue enforcing immigration laws in the area. And in a further escalation of tensions, the U.S. military is deploying 700 Marines to Los Angeles to assist the National Guard. President Trump is promising to restore order and to, quote, liberate Los Angeles. An event in Calgary later this month called Courage to Listen has the Alberta NDP up in arms. The event on June 25th is described as a discussion about building a framework for a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. One of the confirmed speakers at this event will be Energy Minister Brian Jean. But NDP House Leader Christina Gray says separatism is on the agenda and separatists will be there.
Another attendee of this event is the head of the so-called Alberta Prosperity Project, the group that filed a referendum question with Elections Alberta that asks if Alberta should cease to be a province of Canada. It is completely unacceptable that the UCP and a government minister are now conspiring with separatists.
We have to remember that we have a government minister who's getting the permission of the Premier to endorse an event and attend an event where separation is being discussed. And as an experienced elected representative who's been a member of Parliament, who's been a leader of a party that ran for Premier, and who's been a long-time serving member of the Legislative Assembly, he knows his attendance to this event is representative of support for separation.
The New Democrats say stoking the flames of separatism is damaging Alberta's economy and driving away jobs and investments. A study from the Alberta government, awaiting peer review, reports that high selenium levels have been discovered in the Crow's Nest Lake's fish population. The report states that trout and mountain whitefish populations were discovered with selenium levels between 5 and 26 micrograms per gram, which exceeds the province's interim guideline. The province has issued a fish consumption advisory for brown trout, lake trout, and mountain whitefish on the lake. Biologist and senior environmental scientist Guy Gilron says the study is cause for concern when it comes to fish populations.
It's true that the levels that we're looking at are higher than fish tissue concentrations in fish muscle. And so it actually decreases their reproductive success. So some of their offspring, so the larval fish, will maybe not survive, or if they do survive, they could have deformities. So that's a concern. I mean, that's definitely a concern. And if you have many of those fish that have those effects, then it could affect the population for sure. So the fish that are exposed to the selenium are actually not affected at all. It's usually their offspring that are affected. And so what happens is, I think population collapse, I have to say that's a very dramatic statement. I think what we worry about is that if many individuals in a population are influenced by the high level of selenium, that eventually that population will suffer. In other words, that there will be a decrease in the number of fish.
BCN also reached out to the province's Office of Environment and Protected Areas, who replied with a brief statement stating there have been no cases of premature fish deaths or deformities reported. Fish consumption guidance was issued by Alberta Health last month as a precautionary measure. Modernization work has begun in the emergency department at Raymond Hospital in southern Alberta. According to Alberta Health Services, the work aims to improve facilities and patient flow, along with renovations to the laboratory and diagnostic imaging departments. While work progresses, staff and patients will continue to access services through the main entrance. The renovation, anticipated to be completed next spring, will increase the emergency department's footprint by 80%, creating room for more beds and updating infrastructure while enhancing patient privacy and safety. Additional upgrades in other areas of the hospital will include the modernization of key mechanical and electrical equipment, a new phlebotomy room in the lab, and provisions for future expansion of the existing laboratory. Streets Alive Mission has launched a new initiative to support those in the community who need it most. It's simply being called Giving Day. The event is hoping to raise $70,000 this Friday. Chief Development Officer Jennifer Lepko shares further details.
We have a goal of $70,000. We have two amazing donors who have $45,000 available to match. So if we can raise $45,000, we've way blown our goal out of the water. So the funds raised are going to go to support all the things we do here at Streets Alive Mission. Just as an example, some of these services that we recognize them as a restoration to dignity. It makes a huge difference in a person making a change in their life. Get a new pair of clothes, get a new pair of socks, clean underwear, go to the salon and have their hair washed and cut. Those items can change a person's life. We had a gentleman come into the salon, have his hair washed and cut, looked at himself in the mirror and decided that, you know what, I need to make a change, and called Detox, and we got him into treatment right after that. He is sober to this day. So it's all of these programs not only help keep people alive, meet their basic needs, make them feel like they're at least valuable, but it also helps them make better choices.
The community can attend the fundraiser on Friday at the Christian Credit Union from 9:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., or you can simply donate online at streetsalive.ca. The city is reminding residents of Lethbridge of major construction developments that will result in traffic changes, along with large amounts of dust blowing loose soil across neighborhoods. Large-scale earth and lot grading activities have started in both the Crossings and Piers subdivisions, which will strip topsoil from the land, and the resulting work will bring potential for dust and soil particles to blow across adjacent urban areas and properties. The city says the developers do have a soil erosion control plan in place that will minimize the effects. Traffic and speed changes have been put in place in the area, including around the near-completed West Cooley Station Elementary School, which is slated to open this September. Construction has also begun on the new elementary school for the Holy Spirit Catholic School Division. Residents are asked to take safety precautions, especially when driving around these developments, which will last throughout the summer. The Israeli military invited journalists on Sunday into Gaza's second-largest city of Khan Yunis to show what it said is a tunnel under the European hospital.
We didn't target hospital. It is a big achievement for us, hitting in the outskirts of the hospital and around it without damaging the hospital. Hamas is making cynical use in the hospitals and in his civilians, in his own people, as human shields. We found underneath the hospital, right under the emergency room, a compound, a few rooms. In one of them, we killed Mohammed Sinwar, been approved now. He was the brother of Yahya Sinwar, the previous leader of this murderous and terror organization, Hamas. We inherited him, and now he was the leader, and we killed him also. Together with him was Muhammad Shabane, was the head of the Rafah Brigade, and several more terrorists who died with him. We will do our best to reopen it once the threat will be removed. There is a network of tunnels going all around this place. One of our methods is moving the population for their own safety. We are moving them from one place to another for their own safety. Hamas is killing them. Hamas is using them as human shield day after day, time after time. We are seeing in every other house, every other building is being booby-trapped, or you have a shaft of a tunnel inside it, or it is being used by Hamas to hit Israel forces or to launch terror attacks on us. So this is what we are doing.
The government media office in Gaza is denying the Israeli report of a tunnel discovery. Hamas claims the Israeli Defense Forces dug on the site and placed a pipe in the ground before filming. Coming up next, we'll take a look at this week's forecast.
Our 7-day forecast has us with a high of 33 and sunny skies for today. Tomorrow has a high of 27 with sunny skies. Wednesday also shares a high of 27 with partly cloudy skies. Thursday has a high of 24. Friday will have a high of 24 as well, but with a chance of showers. Saturday will have a high of 25 with partly cloudy skies. And Father's Day Sunday will have a high of 23 with partly cloudy skies. Today's almanac has us with an average high of 22 for this time of year with an average low of 8. The record high on this day was set back in 1918 with 32, and the record low in 1926 was 0. The sun rose at 5:24 a.m. today and set at 9:37 p.m. Our national forecast has Vancouver with a high of 20 and sunny skies, and Victoria gets a high of 23 also with sunny skies. Edmonton gets a high of 23 with sunny skies, and Calgary gets a high of 24 also with sunny skies. Saskatoon has a high of 23 with sunny skies. Regina has a high of 24. Winnipeg has a chance of showers with a high of 23. Ottawa has a high of 23 with a chance of thunderstorms. Montreal and Toronto both have chances of showers with highs of 22. Atlantic Canada has Fredericton with a high of 21 and a chance of showers, and Halifax also gets a chance of showers with a high of 14. Charlottetown will have partly cloudy skies with a high of 22, and finishing off our forecast with St. John's, we have a high of 19 and nice sunny skies.
DHL Express Canada says a strike and lockout that kicked off Sunday will barely tap the brakes on its parcel delivery service. The carrier says it's rolled out a contingency plan, while the union, representing more than 2,000 DHL employees, says the company's plan hinges on hiring replacement workers. DHL spokesman Pamela Duque-Rai says the company is disappointed it could not reach a deal and that its proposal includes a 15% wage hike over 5 years. The work stoppage adds to the labor turmoil in the parcel market as Canada Post remains at loggerheads with 55,000 workers amid an overtime ban imposed by the union. The average asking rent in Canada has fallen annually for the 8th straight month. Rentals.ca and Urban Nation says it was down 3.3% in May from a year earlier at about $2,100. Ontario recorded the largest rent decline last month, with asking rents falling 3.6% year over year to an average of roughly $2,300. That was followed by BC's 2.6% decrease to nearly $2,500. One of Canada's largest telecom providers is looking to expand its coverage across Alberta. TELUS says it's investing more than $13 billion over the next 5 years to expand and enhance its network infrastructure and operations in the province. It includes targeted enhancements to 5G and LTE services and expanding home services to rural areas and First Nations. Premier Danielle Smith says the investment is a major boost to Alberta's tech infrastructure and economy and drives forward a commitment to innovation and growth. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 53 points today to 26,375. The Dow was down 1 point to 42,761. The S&P 500 was up 5 points to 6,005, and the Nasdaq was up 61 points to 19,591. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 79 cents to 65.37 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 15 cents to $3.65 US. Gold was up 9.40 to 33.3210 US an ounce, and silver was up 66 cents to 36.68 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.79 per bushel, barley is at $6.90, canola is at $16.21, and corn is at $7.75 per bushel. Live cattle June contract was up 70 cents to $227.37. Feeder cattle August contract was up $1.50 to $311.65, and lean hogs June contract was up 15 cents to $102.70. And the Canadian dollar was unchanged over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 73 cents even US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced Canada is fast-tracking its NATO defense spending commitment, reaching 2% of national GDP on defense this year. Los Angeles has been a chaotic scene with anti-ICE protests continuing. Our foreign correspondent Lisa Daftari joins us to share some of her thoughts on the situation. That interview is straight ahead. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. It's been a weekend of violent riots in the Los Angeles area as the anti-ICE protests take place. And joining us now to discuss this and more is Lisa Daftari, our U.S. correspondent from the Foreign Desk in Los Angeles. Lisa, President Trump sends in the National Guard. California Governor Newsom not terribly happy about that. You want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, he's actually threatened to bring a lawsuit against Trump for taking the actions that he has, for sending the National Guard, for, just wanting to place blame on the White House for the chaos that is unfolding and the lawlessness that is unfolding on the streets of Los Angeles. As we have seen all throughout social media, the line that keeps repeating itself with many people saying you are entitled to peaceful protest. You're not entitled to burn flags and burn cars and vandalize property and to attack police officers. I saw another post that said, imagine being a police officer in Los Angeles where your own mayor, your own governor, and, so many others believe you are the bad guy instead of, you putting yourself, at risk and in the line of fire to help others. So, yeah, it's been crazy, but this is Los Angeles, and for wherever it was George Floyd, and then it was BLM, and we've seen so much of this before.
And we were just chatting before the program here. I sometimes wonder, who are these people? What's their worldview? And are they genuinely concerned? And they're doing this kind of out of the goodness of their hearts. So that's how they see the world. They're helping the world, the situation, whatever. Or are some of them actually paid activists?
Yeah, and it begs the question because you see them taking off from work. You see them with organized T-shirts and organized matching flags, and they we saw this with the encampments, the pro-Hamas encampments on the university campuses. And when you dig a bit deeper, it is a lot of these kind of disruptors that have billions of dollars, and they put it into these grassroots organizations that then go on and organize these protests on the ground. We saw it on social media. They tell people where to be, what time to be there, and they just send out, they triage, they send out all throughout Los Angeles. We see this with, again, the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas movement. They work throughout Los Angeles, and they harass people, they bully people, they show up at protests, they show up in front of the embassy, things like that. And here again, we're seeing the same thing. And again, whatever our views are, and that's a longer discussion to have about the immigration policy of the Trump administration, there's no reason to burn American flags and to wave Mexican flags. There's no reason to attack police officers and to use violence and vandalism to make their points heard. So horrific. And there's a reason why the National Guard was dispatched. So.
Yeah, and of course, that's a point of contention, who's in charge of the National Guard, right? So Trump invoking, special, I guess, whatever laws to do that. But and apparently if I read correctly, it looked like the leader of ICE is talking about arresting Governor Newsom, and he's daring him to do so. Go ahead, arrest me, sort of thing. Does that got any legs? Could he actually arrest him?
I know there's a lot of threats being thrown around, and we saw just a handful of civilian arrests, obviously, in this, trying to make at least examples out of those who are breaking the law. Well, if the governor is breaking the law, then, the threat stands. I mean, look, why should a governor or a mayor or, anyone who is in the power, in the position of power stand in the way of lawmakers doing what they need to do, and those who are whether it's the police, whether it's ICE, whether it is coming from the White House, the reason they're doing this is to stop illegal immigration. California is home to so many wonderful legal migrants. Unfortunately, there is this influx of illegal migrants, many of them being very much a part of this community in terms of doing construction and doing a lot of the labor-intensive work, and that makes it a very, again, sensitive subject for many people. And I think, again, that on its own deserves another conversation, but we're talking right now about the lawlessness. We're talking about standing in the way. We're talking about, getting into the streets. I mean, when you're in a position of legitimacy, like Governor Newsom, like Mayor Bass, like so many of the others who have spoken out against the government, then it's damaging. I mean, we have to be on the same side. This is really, it's a nonpartisan issue when you think about national security. I mean, when you want to keep Americans safe by keeping unsafe people out of our country. So it's all in the goal is that. Now how it is carried out is very tricky, very nuanced, and very complex.
Fine line to tread for sure. Trump's travel ban on 12 different countries goes into effect today. So which countries, and what's the response from Americans? Are they okay with this, or?
Right. We saw this under the first Trump administration as well. There was a lot of backlash, a lot. And some tried to call it the Muslim ban because many of the countries that are on there are in the Arab world, are in the Middle East, are Muslim countries. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. This is not Islamophobia. This is not a target on Muslim countries. This is a list of countries where we either do not have consular relationship with that country, or we believe that a significant number of nefarious actors are coming from that country. So again, this is in line with our national security efforts to, tighten up, our game and to not allow some of these bad actors from coming into the country. Now, do good people suffer because of these policies?
Right.
Absolutely. There are wonderful people coming in from many of these countries. Look, Iran is on that list, and there's a lot. There's so many wonderful, smart, hardworking people who are attempting to come over, asylees that are trying to come over for protection, and we get that. But at the same time, the reason why this is done, again, the broader, the overarching concept of this policy is to really crack down on national security. And these are the growing pains that we've had such lax laws for 4 years, and we see the results. There are consequences. So this is now the pendulum effect.
Yeah, I mean, again, what's in the national interest, big picture, right? I mean, yeah, it's never going to be perfect, but the U.S. Meeting, there's U.S.-China trade talks in London today. So what are the U.S. goals on this one?
I think the Trump administration really, the fact that they're having a meeting is a positive, right? So the markets will absolutely respond to that. And the fact that we're having the meeting is what Trump said. He said, the countries are falling in line. And obviously China being the big bad behemoth of the compromising partner here, that will fail to compromise, I'm sure. And it will really put up a tough fight in terms of compromising with Trump. Now, before Donald Trump was even a presidential candidate, before his first term, before he even thought about becoming president, he always talked about how China's taking advantage of the United States. This is a platform he has always had. Love him or hate him, he has been very consistent on this belief that China and many others, but especially China, has taken advantage of the current global climate, and in particular taken advantage of the United States, and he wants to, even the playing field. So, we hope that we come out with some sort of dialogue, some sort of, of compromise, or working towards some concessions with the Chinese, because look, you can't live with them, or you can't live without them, kind of thing. We do hope that we do come to some sort of compromise with them.
Okay. Well, let's shift to the Middle East for a second here. The boat carrying Greta Thunberg, Vice President of the world, to Gaza with relief supplies, it was intercepted by Israeli Navy, there's, I guess, a dozen activists or so on this thing, and they escorted them to the port where they were actually shown a 43-minute video on the Hamas atrocities on October the 7th. They gave him some sandwiches and water, that sort of thing, but made him sit down and watch. I thought, they need to see that, maybe several times.
They do, but before we get into the video and the sandwiches and the water, she pre-recorded a video saying, if you're watching this, I've been abducted, I've been taken. Trying to create the propaganda, put out this messaging beforehand to make it look as though, she calls it the occupying, Israeli forces have abducted me. There's so much commentary on social media around this, and saying the real people who have been abducted are those Israeli hostages who still remain in Hamas possession, and you're making light of it by calling yourself abducted when there's footage of you taking sandwiches and water from the Israelis. That's the first thing they give her. The first exchange is a sandwich and a bottle of water. And that photo is circulating widely as well. The video is the next step. Teacher with education. She was warned not to enter a war zone. She decided to enter a war zone. And they, of course, took her in because she's, again, entering a war zone. Anyone would be taken in when they're entering a war zone. And again, was warned not to do so. So again, trying to create this again, very viral moment for herself. Once again, as you said, Vice President of the world. I don't know if maybe she wants to be President of the world. She wants that promotion. But this is just another scheme. And it's horrific to really take advantage of this situation and inserting herself just for notoriety. It's crazy how many people eat this up. Really educate yourselves on what's going on in the Middle East rather than looking to this child who knows nothing and tries to just insert herself, and by taking on such a mission to go into a war zone with really no context. I mean, why are you going? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? The amount of aid that she's bringing in is minuscule compared to the amount of aid going in every day. And no one's really covering what's going in every day, but everyone is really fixated on this child trying to make a moment for herself going into a war zone. So I hope she enjoyed her sandwiches, and I hope she enjoyed the footage of October 7th, where I hope something got in there about what's really going on in the world.
All right. Well, we'll leave Greta behind for now. Off to South America, Colombia, an assassination taking place there. Presidential candidate, right wing, right? He gets shot at a rally. So, what's that all about?
Yeah, he had a surgery. He was in critical condition, had a surgery, and the surgery actually went well. A right-wing candidate. We're seeing this kind of referendum sweep the world throughout Europe, throughout Latin America, this kind of push to go right because the left has gone too left. Obviously, again, the pendulum back throughout the world. And again, you see this with the Donald Trump effect, many are calling it, because of him. A lot of Donald Trump type right-wing candidates, the logic, common sense candidates are gaining a lot of popularity and a lot of momentum. He was shot and in the back, a young guy at a rally. And, I don't know if this will make him more popular or it'll make him and his party recoil a bit, just because, this is the way things are in that part of the world. Obviously political opponents, this is how they take things into their own hands. We saw, 2 assassination attempts or more, I should say 2 significant assassination attempts on our own president, Donald Trump. So it's nothing new. I think this is a lot of maybe copycat types of attacks as well. But we wish him well, and we'll see what this means in the bigger scheme of things.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump and Elon Musk, their ongoing feud shows no signs of ending here, and Trump says he has no plans to actually speak to him. So, any updates on that feud?
So it's either 2 very egotistical men really putting out all their dirty laundry and attacking each other publicly, or this is something else of a feud. I mean, a lot of people think this is just theater and it's not real, but it is meant to distract from other things. It's just politics as usual. And others believe that this actually would have happened and that it was predicted, that they actually don't agree on everything, so that their differences would cause this major public rift, as it has. So, it's either way, it's damaging. I don't think this is a good look for either one of them or for the government. Yeah, or for the wonderful things that they have been able to accomplish together.
Yeah, I mean, what's the actual root cause of this, do you think? I mean, I know, again, Trump has been, I guess, talking about taking away some of the subsidies, of course, for electric vehicles, which has a huge impact, of course, on, Elon Musk's finances. That's part of it there. And, of course, Elon criticizing the big, beautiful bill, saying, it's an abomination, it's going to cost trillions of tax dollars and so forth, put us further into debt. So, yeah, what do you think the root cause is?
So this is right, and you hit right at it. This is the root of the issue is exactly this big, beautiful bill that will, be damaging to Elon Musk and his various businesses, mainly to Tesla. And we've seen Tesla stocks go up and down, according to the way that this kind of public argument goes. But, I think Elon knew from the very beginning that this party and this president isn't really pro-EV. They were actually pro-drilling, and, that's just the way it is. So I'm not convinced that would cause, such a shocking, kind of argument between the two. So what really is it? If you don't agree with the guy you're working with, you can talk it out. I'm sure the president and vice president don't agree on everything. So again, we don't know what the root cause is. I'm not buying it that it's just the big beautiful bill or that it's the subsidies.
Well, I just wish 2 huge leaders in the world would just learn to maybe demonstrate a bit of common sense and kindness to one another. Say, hey, let's be respectful. We disagree, but stop calling each other names and putting each other down. Just guys, grow up. And I think
one of the things about this administration that people appreciate is the transparency. And I think sometimes they're a bit too transparent, and the cameras are on. And social media accounts are, you stop tweeting your issues and the stuff that has to be said quietly in the back. There still should be things that are kept quietly in the back.
Thanks so much, Lisa, for your time as always.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Lisa Daftari, our U.S. correspondent from the Foreign Desk in Los Angeles.
Farmers and ranchers are vital to the health of the Canadian economy, but every year they take a risk with weather conditions and global market changes. Joining us from Lethbridge is Ken Coles. He's the Executive Director of Farming Smarter. Ken, so great to have you back.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Now, first of all, can you just share a little bit about what Farming Smarter does as an organization and how you provide help to our agriculture industry? And there may be people who are just joining who have never seen your face before.
Sure. Well, we like to describe ourselves as an innovation hub for production agriculture. So we're trying to help all of those people that are involved in advancing either technologies or new crop types and anything to do with actually growing crops. We want to help them do it better, and we support that through unbiased scientific research. That could be both small plot, in the field type research, as well as on farm scalable type things. So we're hoping to build resilient farms and keep farmers profitable and sustainable.
Now, we've had some pretty dry conditions here in southern Alberta over the last few years. I mean, this area almost seems very desert-like. Are things looking any better this year? And where are the watershed and moisture levels at?
Sure. Well, we are actually a semi-arid area by definition, so we're used to it being dry. Have we had some significant droughts recently? Absolutely. So last year, I think we pulled out of the drought pretty well with a lot of great rains in May. This year, we're shaping up to be average so far, and it's been a good seeding window. So a lot of farmers are just about wrapped up with their seeding. There is decent amounts of water in our reservoirs for the irrigation. So we're not looking at major water restrictions, but there are still restrictions in place for irrigation. So we'd like to see the rains that we normally get in May and June, and we'll have a good year.
Now, are there any new developments in irrigation that can produce better results for producers?
Well, the irrigation industry is always trying to innovate. There's been work being done in the variable rate technologies, which is honestly slow to be adopted. We're working on some, and others are working on that as well. A lot of times it's about being able to sort through the new technology and make sure that they're easy enough and practical enough to apply. We did have a proposal in ourselves to actually look at the deficit irrigation situation if it continues to be a problem. So that project would look at what happens if we only have 4 inches of water to irrigate, or 6 or 8, and then how would we best allocate those to the various crops. And I think we got a slow start on that one, but we're hoping to at least get going on that project, and then it'll be a 3-year project to help sort that out. Aside from that, irrigation management has been sort of under supported as there's been cutbacks from the government, and hoping that at least we and a few other groups can help fill the gap a little bit. But farmers always do well on their own. It's something that is important to the industry.
Now, I want to talk about a little bit of international news because with the Chinese tariffs on canola, that's something that really affects us here in southern Alberta. So how are canola farmers responding? Are we seeing canola farmers planting different crops this year, or are they finding different markets to export to?
Well, it's a really tough question, and I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to global agriculture. But it's funny, we talk about the weather. More and more we hear now that the biggest risk for farmers is actually policy, and foreign policies, our own internal policies, can have a pretty significant impact on farmers' bottom lines. So it's tricky because we try to build cropping systems that are resilient and that can deal with the weather. Now we need to almost build resilient and adaptable cropping systems that can deal with major market change. So I'm sure that that there's an instinct to sort of change crops. I myself on my own farm switched out of peas because they're also being tariffed right now, and went to lentils. So sometimes if there's a nice way to do an adaptation within a rotation, farmers will do it. But a lot of times they're sticking to those rotations because those are what allow them to sort of weather the storm through the multiple factors of variability that they're faced with.
Yeah, so it seems like a real uphill battle when you're dealing with weather, foreign policy, and even domestic policy. I can see why some would want to change, but apparently some oil companies are looking to canola for use in biofuels. And are farmers finding a market there?
Well, that's been a very slow one to develop as well, and is really policy focused more than anything. I think whenever you take a crop and try to develop an internal market for it, like that's what the US did a lot with their corn and the ethanol, and you create a domestic market rather than having to export. So economically, sometimes it makes sense, but it doesn't always make sense in the long run, especially environmentally. The biodiesel thing in canola, there's sort of the ethics behind it. Do we literally want to burn crops when we're producing food? So there's that food versus fuel debate. But there's also sort of when there's damaged crops and that you can produce them. So the biofuel industry has been fairly slow to develop. However, when states like California implement policies that require a certain amount of biofuels, that's an instant market. So then businesses will respond.
Now, I understand that much of the fertilizer that farmers need is imported from the U.S. I assume that tariffs will eventually drive prices up, but what are the buying options for our farmers, especially when our neighbors to the east are large exporters of potash?
That's right. Again, not an expert in the field. We're more about how do we grow the crops here in southern Alberta. But I did have a chance to catch up with Dr. Regis Karamanis, who's been doing a little bit of work with us and has a career in the fertilizer industry. The biggest concern for Canada is that we no longer produce any phosphorus fertilizer. So we rely heavily on the US and I think Morocco, he said, as far as importing phosphorus fertilizer. So that's a bit of a challenge. I understand that a lot of the fertilizers come into the New Orleans port and then they're brought up to here. So if we can find trade partners that will ship to different locations, then that might be a strategy on the phosphorus front. On the nitrogen fertilizer, most of our urea is actually produced in Canada. So we're in pretty good shape as far as being able to produce that fertilizer. And then we're the king of potash. So potassium fertilizers, we actually export a lot of that. So that's wherever we're exporting. I think the tariffs are probably hurting our businesses more than anything. And I think the reality is that we don't dictate prices, regardless of whether we produce them here in Canada or not. It's global markets that will dictate the prices to farmers.
Now, have there been any innovations in how to best apply fertilizers and what types of fertilizer to use to get better results? I mean, obviously, like potassium is not a concern for us.
Yeah, potassium isn't, because our soils are quite rich in it. We have new soils from the glaciation period. They're pretty rich in potassium. However, the innovations have been more on the industry side. We don't really tend to have a lot of public work or being done on fertilizers. In fact, we just actually did get a project funded through ARDAR to update fertilizer recommendations for irrigated crops. So that's one that we're starting this year, where we're going to look at sort of cereals and oil seeds and potatoes. That work hasn't been updated for about 30 years. And I think that it's important that we do continue to make sure that we're using fertilizers as efficiently as possible.
Now, when every dollar counts, ag producers need to be as efficient as possible. And we saw on your website there was an article on some innovative ways to put the dryland corners to good use in an irrigated field. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting project. Again, another one funded by ARDAR just recently. So this will be the first year of the project. And it kind of just stems from conversations with farmers. Irrigated farmers, of course, use pivots, and not a lot of them actually have the fancy swing arms that will reach out and get those corners. So there's a lot of dryland corners that end up not being managed very effectively. So the whole point of that project is to really sort of survey the landscape and what are farmers doing to manage them. Like the one farmer that actually spurred the idea for the entire trial said to me, man, I wish he didn't have to deal with the dryland corners because they're just full of the glyphosate tolerant kochia weeds. He's focused on his high value irrigated crops, and these corners are sort of just almost a nuisance and a loss. So we're hoping that maybe we can, and on the flip side, other people are starting to irrigate their dryland corners. And so there's all these different management approaches. The point of the project is to sort of survey what's being done, give a bit of an evaluation, and see if there's some better opportunities to deal with that land.
Now, what about specialty crops? Are there any specialty crops that farmers are turning to that are getting a better return?
Well, under the irrigation side of things, there's lots of high value specialty crops that are sort of the cornerstone of a farm's business. And of course, we're seeing a large expansion of potato processing capacity here in southern Alberta. So we're seeing potato acres where we've never seen it grown before. That's a pretty significant high value expansion. Seed canola is tremendously valuable here in southern Alberta as well. So we've got major companies that are established up doing their hybrid seed production in southern Alberta. Sugar beets, like the reality is that the farmers have they can only do those switches if they have a contract with those companies. So you can't just on a dime just decide because there's a tariff that, hey, I'm going to go more potatoes without those contracted acres. So it is a bit of an art, I think, navigating those types of opportunities.
Now, every so often we hear the news of the number of family farm operations declining. Is that statistically true? Is the number dropping? And if so, why? I've heard about corporations buying up farms, and I've heard of the younger generations just not showing any interest of farming. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the stats are true. There's been definitely a reduction in the number of farms total as they get larger and larger. I mean, the amount of land that would be needed to sustain a family keeps increasing as well. It's not to say that there aren't family farms out there. It's just the sheer number of them have been reducing. As far as the interest in farming, I think that's shifted a bit. I think that there's a lot renewed interest and excitement about agriculture. In fact, even here at Farming Smarter, we hire, I think, somewhere around 15 summer students each year. And a lot of times we're hiring students that have no background in agriculture. Last year alone, we had 3 students that fell in love with it by working here and switched their career paths to agriculture. So I'm while there's still a need for more people in ag, I think that there's a lot of excitement around the opportunities.
Well, that sounds really promising. And farming has also become a very high-tech business these days. Is there a measurable difference in success rates when you compare farmers who are staying up to date as compared with those who stay with the older and time-tested methods?
Yeah, really good question. And that's a lot of what we deal with, right? Because innovation is risky. And a lot of times you can burn a lot of money, you can burn a lot of time trying to tackle new and bring in new sort of technologies and practices. That's a risky venture. A lot of what we try to do is de-risk that. So I also find that innovation isn't always about high tech. Sometimes you could take a low tech thing or really old process and apply it in a different way. And then to me, that's innovation, as long as it provides value to the farm. So I've seen both. I've seen, very successful innovative farms that are trying absolutely everything under the sun, and I've seen very successful low-tech farms, but they're still innovative in my view because of the way they're taking it on. So it's a good mix.
So what would you say to farmers watching that are old school? Like, what do they need to change to become more profitable or sustainable?
Well, if I could answer that, I'd probably have another job somewhere else making a lot of money. I always have a lot of respect for agriculture and the folks that have been in it for a long time, because it is a tough job. It's a risky job. I think it's a bit of an attitude, right? Like, sometimes you get burned trying new things, and that's why they've learned over the years not to be too adventuresome. But I mean, I think working with us is one way of dealing with that. So we can sort of try out things on a smaller scale. And come around to events and talk to, farmer to farmer networks are fantastic as well. But, obviously the next generation is doing that. Sometimes they get busy, managing their jobs too, but always having an open mind and open attitude and evaluate change. And not everything works, and not everything works every year. It's a really challenging situation, but I think having that learning positive attitude is the most important piece.
Ken Coles is the Executive Director of Farming Smarter. Ken, thanks so much for your time today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Have a good one.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.